Imagine this. You're standing in a packed stadium, tens of thousands of fans roaring as their hero steps onto the pitch. The spotlight follows him, the wonder kid who has everything. The million-dollar contract, the adoring fans, the world at his feet. But fast forward just a few years, and that same man isn't walking onto a pristine football pitch. He's walking into a prison cell, trading his football boots for prison uniforms, and his dreams of glory for a nightmare of shame and regret. This is the story of football's fallen stars, players who had it all and lost everything. These aren't just cautionary tales about bad decisions, they're shocking revelations about how fame, wealth, and power can corrupt even the most talented athletes. From sexual assault to murder, from drunk driving deaths to kidnapping, these stories will make you question everything you thought you knew about your favorite sport. Today, we're diving deep into the dark side of the beautiful game, exploring the lives of players who went from wonder kid to inmate. Some of these names you'll recognize immediately, legends of the sport whose careers were cut short by their own criminal actions. Others you may have forgotten, their talents overshadowed by the horror of their crimes. But all of them share one thing in common. They threw away careers that millions would kill for, and in some cases, they literally did. We'll examine how the culture of invincibility in professional football can create monsters, how clubs sometimes enable bad behavior, and how the criminal justice system struggles to hold these millionaire athletes accountable. From Manchester to Barcelona, from Sao Paulo to Sunderland, we'll trace the downfall of men who had the world at their feet and chose to throw it all away. Let's start with perhaps the most disturbing category of fallen footballers, those convicted of sexual crimes against women and children. These cases expose the darkest abuse of power in football, where celebrity status and wealth are weaponized against vulnerable victims. Adam Johnson's case shocked English football to its core in 2016. The former Manchester City and Sunderland winger, who earned 12 caps for England, was at the peak of his career when his world came crashing down. Johnson had developed a relationship with a 15-year-old Sunderland fan, a girl who idolized him, waited for him after matches, and wore his name on her shirt. Between December 2014 and January 2015, Johnson exchanged 834 WhatsApp messages with the teenager, grooming her before meeting her twice in his Range Rover. During the second meeting, on January 30, 2015, Johnson engaged in sexual activity with the child in his vehicle. The case became even more shocking when it was revealed that Johnson's girlfriend had just given birth to their daughter, and he had admitted to cheating on her multiple times during their relationship. What made the Johnson case particularly egregious was his behavior during the legal process. He initially denied all charges, forcing the young victim to endure a year of being called a liar on social media, where trolls unlawfully posted her name and picture. Only on the first day of his trial in February 2016 did Johnson finally plead guilty to 1 count of sexual activity with a child and 1 count of grooming. He was later found guilty by a jury of a more serious charge involving digital penetration. Judge Jonathan Rose didn't hold back during sentencing, stating that Johnson had shown no remorse and viewed the victim as just another girl to get with, fully aware she was only 15 years old. The judge noted that Johnson had every opportunity to plead guilty earlier, but instead chose to put the victim through the trauma of a trial. Johnson was sentenced to 6 years in prison and ordered to pay £50,000 in prosecution costs. Medical experts testified that the victim suffered severe psychological harm, entering many dark places in the year following the assault. Sunderland Football Club's handling of the case also came under scrutiny. It emerged that club CEO Margaret Byrne had known a year before the trial that Johnson had admitted to kissing the underage girl and sending her explicit messages, yet allowed him to continue playing. Johnson appeared in 28 games for Sunderland even after his arrest in March 2015, only being dropped when he changed his plea on the first day of trial. The club terminated his contract on February 11, 2016, and Byrne resigned shortly after, admitting that she had made a serious mistake. Adidas terminated Johnson's sponsorship deal, and EA Sports removed his likeness from FIFA 16. After serving 3 years of his 6-year sentence, Johnson was released from prison in March 2019. His footballing career is effectively over. No club wants to be associated with his name, and he remains a registered sex offender. But Johnson's case, horrifying as it is, isn't isolated. In 2012, Ched Evans was convicted of raping a 19-year-old woman and sentenced to 5 years in prison. The Welsh international, who had been playing for Sheffield United, served half his sentence before being released in 2014. The case sparked massive controversy when Sheffield United initially offered him a contract upon his release, only to withdraw it after public backlash. Evans maintained his innocence, and his conviction was eventually overturned on appeal in 2016 after a retrial, and he returned to professional football. However, his victim suffered immensely. She was named on social media in violation of her legal anonymity, received death threats, and had to move house 5 times because of harassment. The case highlighted the toxic victim-blaming culture that can surround high-profile sexual assault cases involving footballers.
If the abuse of power reveals the dangers of sexual assault, the next category exposes how recklessness and violence can turn footballers into killers, sometimes accidentally, sometimes deliberately, but always with devastating consequences. Lee Hughes is a name that still carries weight in English football, but for all the wrong reasons. The striker was playing for West Bromwich Albion in 2004 when his life changed forever on a November evening. Hughes, driving his Mercedes, crashed into another vehicle, killing 56-year-old Douglas Graham, a father of 4. But Hughes didn't stop. He didn't call for help. He didn't check on the victim. Instead, he fled the scene, leaving Graham dying in the wreckage. Hughes handed himself in to police the next day, but the damage was done, both literally and figuratively. It later emerged that Hughes had been drinking before getting behind the wheel. In August 2004, he was convicted of causing death by dangerous driving and leaving the scene of an accident. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in prison, though he served just 3 before being released in 2007. During his trial, the court heard heartbreaking victim impact statements from Graham's family, describing how their lives had been destroyed by Hughes's recklessness and cowardice. The footballer showed remorse during the proceedings, but critics argued it came too late. Graham was dead, and no amount of apology could bring him back. After his release, Hughes attempted to rebuild his career, playing for Oldham Athletic, Notts County, and various non-league clubs. Luke McCormick's case is equally tragic and perhaps even more heartbreaking because of the youth of his victims. In June 2008, Luke McCormick, the Plymouth Argyle goalkeeper, was returning home from a teammate's wedding when he fell asleep at the wheel of his Range Rover while over the legal alcohol limit. His vehicle crashed into a Toyota being driven by Philip Peake, instantly killing Peake's 2 young sons, 10-year-old Aaron Peake and 8-year-old Ben Peake. The boy's father and another passenger survived with injuries, but 2 innocent children were dead because a professional footballer had made a catastrophically irresponsible decision to drink and drive. McCormick was charged with 2 counts of causing death by dangerous driving and sentenced to 7 years and 4 months in prison in 2008. The case devastated the Peake family and the entire Plymouth community. Philip Peake, who lost both his sons in an instant, showed remarkable courage in court, delivering a victim impact statement that brought the courtroom to tears. He described the boys' bright futures cut short and the impossible grief of losing both children simultaneously. McCormick, as he said, expressed deep remorse, writing letters of apology to the Peake family from prison. After serving 4 years, he was released in 2012 on parole. In what some viewed as a controversial decision, McCormick was given a second chance in football.
He signed with Truro City before returning to Plymouth Argyle, where he eventually became club captain in 2014, a move that sparked mixed reactions from fans. Some admired the club's willingness to offer redemption. Others felt it was inappropriate to celebrate a man who had killed 2 children. McCormick retired from professional football in 2021, and by many accounts, he's turned his life around since his release, becoming an advocate for responsible driving. But Aaron and Ben Peake never got the chance to turn their lives around. They were robbed of that opportunity by a split-second decision to drive drunk. These death by dangerous driving cases are tragic enough, but they pale in comparison to what we must discuss next: deliberate murder. And that brings us to Bruno Fernandes de Souza, not the Manchester United midfielder, but the Brazilian goalkeeper whose name has become synonymous with one of the most horrific crimes in football history. Bruno was a rising star in Brazilian football, playing for the legendary Flamengo club between 2007 and 2010. He was talented, charismatic, and tipped as a future Brazilian national team member, possibly even for the 2014 World Cup on home soil. But behind the fame and success lurked a darker reality. In 2009, Bruno began a relationship with Elisa Samudio, a 25-year-old model and actress. When Samudio became pregnant with Bruno's child, the goalkeeper, who was married at the time, saw her as a threat to his comfortable life. According to court testimony, Bruno and associates kidnapped Samudio in 2009 and tried to force her to have an abortion by administering unknown drugs. Miraculously, Samudio and the baby survived this first attack, and she gave birth to their son, whom she named Bruninho in 2010. But Bruno's nightmare was far from over. Samudio began pursuing him for child support and recognition of paternity. DNA tests confirmed Bruno was the father, and suddenly the goalkeeper was facing financial obligations and public scandal. So Bruno, according to prosecutors, decided on a permanent solution. In June 2010, Samudio was lured to a ranch in Minas Gerais under the pretense of negotiating a settlement regarding child support. She arrived with Bruninho. She would never leave that ranch alive. According to testimony from Bruno's 17-year-old cousin, who became the first to confess, Samudio was tied up, strangled by a hitman named Bola, or Ball, and then, in a detail so gruesome it's almost unbelievable, her body was dismembered and fed to dogs. In March 2013, after a trial that dominated Brazilian headlines, Bruno was convicted of ordering Samudio's murder, concealing her body, and kidnapping his infant son. He was sentenced to 22 years in prison. The case horrified Brazil and sparked urgent conversations about violence against women in a country already struggling with femicide rates. But here's where the story takes an even more disturbing turn. In February 2017, after serving just 6 years and 7 months, Bruno was released on a legal technicality while his appeal was being processed. And immediately upon his release, Brazilian football clubs started offering him contracts. Boa Esporte Club signed him to a 2-year deal, arguing that he deserved a second chance. The decision sparked international outrage. 5 sponsors immediately withdrew their support from the club. Women's rights groups protested outside the stadium. The coach of Boa Esporte's women's team resigned in protest, and Samudio's family lived in terror, arguing that Bruno posed a danger to them and to the grandson he had tried to kill twice, once before birth and once by ordering his mother's murder. Brazilian authorities eventually came to their senses. In April 2017, the Supreme Court ordered Bruno back to prison, where he remained until July 2019, when he was released again under a semi-open program that allowed him to work or train during the day while under house arrest at night. Multiple clubs have given him contracts since then, despite the heinous nature of his crimes. Elisa Samudio was 25 years old when she was murdered. Her son Bruninho, now a teenager, grew up without his mother because his father chose murder over child support. If that's not a fallen star, I don't know what is. Some fallen football stars don't fit neatly into categories like violence or sexual assault. Their crimes are so unusual, so unexpected, that they deserve their own examination. These stories range from financial fraud to kidnapping to, yes, terrorism. Mickey Thomas is remembered as a talented Welsh winger who played for Manchester United, Everton, and earned 51 caps for Wales. But in the early 1990s, while playing for Wrexham, Thomas got involved in a counterfeit currency scam that would land him in prison. Thomas was caught laundering fake 10 and 20-pound notes through the club's youth trainees, essentially using young players as unwitting accomplices in his fraud scheme. When police investigated, they discovered Thomas had been passing counterfeit money through the club for an extended period. He was arrested in 1993 and sentenced to 18 months in jail for his role in the operation. The case was particularly shocking because Thomas had used his position of authority over young players to facilitate his crime, exploiting the trust that existed between senior players and academy prospects. After serving his sentence, Thomas returned to football and later became a popular figure on the after-dinner speaking circuit, often joking about his time in prison, though the young trainees who were dragged into his scheme probably didn't find it quite so amusing. René Higuita, the flamboyant Colombian goalkeeper famous for his scorpion kick save against England, has one of the strangest prison stories in football history. In 1993, Higuita was imprisoned for 7 months in connection with a kidnapping case involving the notorious drug lord Pablo Escobar. Higuita's role was to deliver ransom money for the release of an 11-year-old girl who had been kidnapped. While Higuita claimed he was simply acting as a concerned intermediary trying to help free a child, Colombian law forbids profiting from kidnapping in any way, and Higuita had accepted payment for his courier services. He was convicted and spent 7 months in a Bogotá jail before being released without further charges. The case highlighted the complex and dangerous intersection between Colombian football and the drug cartels that dominated the country in the early 1990s. Higuita maintained he was trying to help, but the law didn't see it that way. Despite the conviction, Higuita remains a beloved figure in Colombian football, remembered more for his spectacular saves than his criminal record. Ronaldinho, one of the greatest players of his generation and a 2-time FIFA World Player of the Year, found himself behind bars in 2020 in one of the most bizarre cases in recent football history. Ronaldinho and his brother Roberto de Assis were arrested in Paraguay after attempting to enter the country using fake passports. The Brazilian legends claimed they had been given the fraudulent documents as gifts and didn't realize they were forgeries, a claim many found hard to believe. The brothers were detained in Asunción, where Ronaldinho spent his 40th birthday in prison. They eventually pled guilty to using false documents and were released in August 2020 after paying a $200,000 fine and spending 171 days in custody, including time in prison and later under house arrest in a luxury hotel. Ronaldinho's case demonstrated that even global superstars aren't above the law, though his relatively short sentence and luxurious house arrest conditions suggested wealth still affords significant privileges even when caught red-handed. But perhaps the most extreme case of a footballer-turned-criminal is Nizar Trabellis, a Tunisian forward who played professionally in Germany for Fortuna Düsseldorf in the 1990s. Trabellis made only 1 appearance for the club, scoring 1 goal, but his post-football career took a dark and shocking turn. In 2001, Trabellis was arrested in Belgium and charged with planning to carry out a suicide bombing attack on a NATO airbase where U.S. soldiers were stationed. Authorities also believed he was involved in planning an attack on the U.S. Embassy in Paris. Trabellis had become radicalized and joined al-Qaeda, transforming from professional athlete to aspiring terrorist.